All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Principal's Classroom. I am so excited for you to spend time with me and my special guest today. This is really getting fancy, everybody. On site here at Chisholm Elementary, as we have another healthy and helpful conversation to our work together with our children and growing every single day as learners and as leaders. And so today I'm sitting with the one and only Mr. Ward, one of our parents here at Chisholm Elementary. We always have amazing conversations, and I always thoroughly enjoy them and learn something every time that we talk.
Yep.
And so I'm delighted and so grateful that you were willing to come on camera with me to have a conversation about a topic that I think is really top of mind for so many parents and educators. In many different ways, but also something that we're still learning about. And so before we dive into today's topic, Mr. Ward, who are you? Tell everybody.
The existential question for all of us.
The existential question, yes.
We've had three girls come through Chisholm. One is still here.
Yes.
Susie's in third grade. Etta graduated 2 years ago and Junie last year. And all three of our girls have been big participants in the theater program here at Chisholm, which is one of our favorite parts of the school. Shout out to Miss Mack. So that's sort of my connection to the school, obviously. I'm a journalist. Have spent 22, 23 years in journalism, mostly as a print reporter, which I don't even know if people use that term anymore. Print reporter. Basically, I'm a writer. I would go on television, sometimes, but I kind of actually avoided television for reasons that actually connect to my interest in this conversation around phones, because I've long really been fascinated by the ways that technology shapes us, and it shapes the ways that we think, and it shapes the ways that we behave, and it shapes the ways that we communicate. So this all goes back to a book that I read years and years ago. It was written 40 plus years ago, called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, and it was about the impact of changing from a print-based culture, around the 1950s, to a TV-based culture, and the ways that rewired our collective consciousness as a society, as a world, really. And then there was, I've just kind of continued to be fascinated by this question of how do we know what we know, which is the formal term for that is called epistemology.
Epistemology. So we're only 2 minutes into this conversation. Aren't you already learning so much? I know I am. So Mr. Ward, again, you're a writer, you're a researcher, and you're a proud husband and father of five
kids,
5 beautiful children, and superstars who have been on our Shirley Chisholm stages. And again, this topic today that we're going to unpack a little bit more and hopefully offer some ideas to anyone who watches our conversation is all about, like you said, technology and its impact upon us, both what we understand and perhaps what we may not understand. We live in such a technological age where, it feels like our phones are connected to our hands in many ways, right? And we're constantly being bombarded with thoughts and ideas and advertisements and all the types of things. And as a principal and as educators and as parents, we're seeing that it's starting at such a young age, right? Even though the American Psychological Association says, hey, don't really expose children to screens and to TV and all the things before age 2, oftentimes we see little ones, with some form of a device in hand and being exposed to all of these fast-paced images and all the things, right? And so we need to get smarter. And so what do you think, Mr. Ward, we need to know about the impact of cell phones and technology on our young people and even on ourselves as adults, too, that perhaps we're not giving enough attention to?
I think there are two kind of table setter thoughts here. One is that we shouldn't come to the conversation around phones or technology from a black and white, is this good or bad perspective, right? It's not that binary. It's more a question of what is good and what is not good, and how can we make use of the good and discard the bad. I think the second sort of thought here is that a lot of times people get focused on what's the content that's coming through our phones, like, and that's not unimportant. Like, it does matter to think about, like, what is my kid watching? What kind of movies are they watching? What kind of content are they seeing on social media? Right. But I think that's secondary to something that people don't really think about as much, which is kind of what I said earlier. How does our technology shape the way that we think and behave? And it goes back to a story that I believe was told by a novelist. And he tells a story about these two young fish who are swimming around in the ocean. And an older fish comes by and he says, "How's the water?" And the two fish kind of look at him, keep swimming, and then after a few seconds, one of the younger fish turns to the other younger fish and he goes, "What's water?"
Wow.
And the point is, a lot of times we're being impacted and swimming around in things that we don't even realize are there. We don't realize their effect on us. And that is what I think is what it means to become awake to the impact of technology, to start asking these questions, to start talking back to our televisions, to start talking back to our phones, and not just being passive receivers of what is happening to us. It's, somebody was trying to, people send me YouTube links all the time, like, watch this speech, watch this or that, and I just can't do it. I want to read it, partly because I can do it faster, but second because it's just so passive to sit there and watch somebody talk at me. And, like, obviously if I'm in a speech, you can't, like, talk, you can't interrupt the speaker, but with the written word, I can really, like, interrogate that and be active.
I think what I'm hearing from you, and I 100% agree, is that like you're saying, this notion of not just being a passive consumer and recipient of the information that's coming at you, but instead, you said, interrogate that information. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Right? And we are, I think, running this risk in society and in education where we are dumbing down a lot of things, right? And kind of popularizing groupthink, but as opposed to, like, no, what do you think, Mr. Ward? What do you think, parent? What do you think, student? What are your ideas, and how can we innovate? So something that's a big deal to me is this idea, hence the reason why I've started this Principal's Classroom, is about using the platforms for, yes, positive content creation, but like you said, with a level of consciousness, right? It is that we have a responsibility as well to put out the information that we hope will inspire and will make a difference in our society. And so I appreciate how you're uplifting the fact that, yes, technology is utilitarian, right? Like, we need it, right?
It's a tool. It's a tool. Just like a shovel.
Absolutely. Yeah, but for what purpose are we using it, right? And also not to be, I love that novelist example that you said, like, well, what is water? Like, to be more aware, right? In terms of where we are with all the things. So, oh man, wow, I love this. This is so exciting. What are some of the pros of cell phone use, right? I mean, again, like you said, it's not necessarily a black and white kind of conversation that we're having about the topic, but I know that neither one of us are advocating, like, throw your phones away, right? No, that's not realistic. But so what are some of the pros and the cons that we should be aware of, especially as it relates to supporting, young learners and adolescents and all the things?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll hear you can answer this question the same way you might answer, or you might hear people talking about AI. There's a lot of alarm about AI, but there's also a lot of people who say, look, it's going to make a lot of things more efficient and easier, and it'll make us smarter by giving us access to information that we don't have, and all of that is true of phones. I mean, they do, it's nice to have something that can show us the directions to somewhere. That's super easy. I think it can, like, sort of big picture, be a tool to help us become more powerful as individuals, more wealthy even. It can help us make money at times. It can make us smarter. I think on the whole they don't make us smarter because of the ways that we have failed to regulate and incentivize the companies that make these products that we're using. But it can connect us to one another if again we use it the right way. Unfortunately, a lot of these connections become anti-social media rather than social media. But there is so much potential for good, and of course it's made our lives incredibly more convenient. The Uber Eats, Robinhood for investors. It does, it does sort of reduce barriers to entry. That were previously only accessible to people with large amounts of money and power. The ways that people can publish information that used to be only accessible to people who had the money to buy the means of production. Publishing plants, these huge plants, you had to have that to get your word out. Now you don't.
So the world has become more accessible to us. On the flip side, what have you found of some of the cons of cell phone and technology use that perhaps we're not thinking about?
I think it's maybe important to talk about some of the things that people who have created these technologies are doing. Bill Gates, I believe, the founder of Microsoft, did not let his kids have phones, smartphones, until they were 14. There are a lot of technology CEOs in Silicon Valley. There are stories from that part of the world in California where they hire nannies, and part of the contract that they make the nannies sign is that they do not allow their young children to interact with screens, either at all or minimally. There's a number of stories like that. I think another good stat here is that children who are lower income spend 2 hours a day more than children who are higher income interacting with screens. So the question is, what does Bill Gates know that we don't, right? And I think that is just sort of a starting point for talking about, okay, these screens and these social media platforms, at what point does it become us clocking into a factory to produce content that then becomes monetized by these companies? And sometimes people can make money. I'm not saying that does happen. But the average 14-year-old or 8-year-old, watching TikTok videos or YouTube, they're just sort of having, I think, their attention span and their ability to think deeply really, I think, degraded.
Absolutely. You just shared some really important and powerful information. Maybe I'll link some of that information in the description here. But that's fascinating, right? Like the people who've created these technologies actually say, yeah, they're great, but not for my own kids until 14 years old or until X, Y, and Z age. However, the average consumer, we're, providing our students with these access points at age 3 and age 4, giving cell phones to kids who are 7 years old and 8 years old. And so something that I'm seeing is that the age when our students are having access to these phones we're getting younger and younger with cell phones. And I can understand for some perspective. There are some families who I talk to who are like, I just want to make sure my child is safe. And I honor that, respect that. So again, this is not a conversation to cast judgment or to, tell any family what to do, but this conversation is one that we're hoping will help folks think more critically about the use of technology and cell phones in their homes. I know personally, I have a 14-year-old, my husband and I, and he has a cell phone, but it doesn't sleep in the room with him, right? Like, we want to make sure that our children are holistically well, and so he needs to have maintain his bedtime, yes, even as a high school student, right? And I don't want him to have the temptation of checking all the things in the middle of the night or getting a text from whoever, all those types of things. And so it is my parental responsibility to put up some of these parameters. Again, you're a parent of 5 beautiful children, spanning a variety of ages. And so I guess I'm also curious to know, and for folks who may be watching, what other advice do you think we should offer to folks to effectively balance the use of technology? Because technology is not going anywhere. And we can only imagine, like you said, with AI and all the other inventions, we're only just getting started,
Right.
right, to where we're headed. So how do we teach our children to think critically and, again, to use these resources as tools, but not the end all be all?
Yeah, I'm tempted to sort of bring up the Matrix, not because I am a conspiracy theorist and think that there are, forces unseen with control of everything, but just that, again, it brings to mind the idea of waking up and like becoming aware of the things that are influencing us. And yeah, we are not here to criticize other people or look down or throw stones at anybody. I mean, of course, having 5 kids, we know what it's like to be exhausted and to need your kids to just be quiet.
Be quiet. Gracie's
so
Corner.
We get that. And
hour.
you mentioned phones in the room at bed. That's actually one of the things that we've really struggled to enforce with our teenagers. We are failing at that is a metric we try to meet. We try to have them have their phones plugged in our room at night so that they're not up losing sleep and on the device too long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that is a hard one to enforce, and we're failing right now more than we're succeeding. I think it's important as an adult to set a good example there, to do something similar. I'm not putting my phone in our kids' room, like in some kind of switch, but I do plug it in across the room, so it's not next to my bed, and I think that's important. It also helps me get up more easily because the alarm goes off and I have to get out of bed.
No snooze.
But yeah, you said earlier, and I have one or two more things practically, but you said earlier, I want to make sure I mention this, that we're still finding out a lot.
Yeah.
And that's very true. There's a lot of research and data that's come out about the impact of phones and social media on us. There's a lot more study that needs to be done and will be done. But I think one of the things that's been remarked upon a lot in the last couple of years is just the impact on mental health of young people, especially girls, it turns out. A lot of mental health problems for young teen girls when it comes to the use of social media. And, there's some debate over whether that's caused by social media. There's a strong case that there's some linkages there. So, a couple other practical things. I think a big thing for us is we try to have dinner together as often a week as we can. And when we're together at the meal table, that's a no phone zone. Right? And again, have to start with us and set the right example. I think other, practical things is trying to take breaks from your phone. Could be an hour and then extending to 2 hours, next week on a certain day. Just trying to build that muscle of not sort of just every time you're bored, picking up a distraction.
Right.
Turns out boredom's actually really good for our creativity. It's good for our happiness. I could think of maybe a couple more if I had.
I want to call something out that I know of you and your wife that I think is, exemplary, and that is, you have your kids involved in like a lot of things. I know your oldest son is a wrestler. And so that takes him all kind of places and doing all kind of cool things. And I think that, when we think about balance, right? Again, if we're saying balance technology, then what are we also putting in its place or providing our students with our children with these other outlets, right? And so, like you said, boredom is not a negative thing. It's an opportunity. It's the blank canvas for what do you want to create. So it is that you want to explore performing arts. You want to, explore dance. You want to explore writing or whatever it is. Like, we have to be comfortable with our thoughts. I think people sometimes are just afraid to be alone with their thoughts. It's like, no, it's okay. It's okay to be still for a moment. And I know we said interrogate like the content that's coming up, but also like interrogate your heart. Like what it is that you want to do. And we have to, I love how you said, model that for our children. I'm very, thoughtful about the fact that my son is watching everything that we do, right? And my students. 540 of them are watching everything that I do. Right. And so when they see how I respond to things, or they see how, I'm taking time to read, and they see me with a book, or I'm talking about something that I'm writing, it is that we are modeling for them both explicitly and implicitly. And so I appreciate you calling that out. And I'm sure there's more ideas too that, folks have
Yeah.
as it relates to how we're trying to create these boundaries for our children. But I know that something for sure, Mr. Ward, right? Like we can't leave it up to chance.
Yeah, and I think the word that you just said that struck me so forcefully is create.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're just consuming,
Mm-hmm.
the images that are coming at us,
Yeah.
we're not fulfilling our purpose as human beings.
Yeah.
We need to be creative. We need to be
Mm-hmm.
creating things, and that word create can be applied to many different things.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be something we may typically think of as creativity or creation. I've told a friend of mine who he doesn't read a whole lot of books like I do, right? He doesn't have a lot of the same interests as I do. He
Mm-hmm.
walks into a social setting
Mm-hmm.
and he creates memories for people.
Okay.
That is his gift.
That's good for sure.
But I think anything you can do to spend intentional time,
Mm-hmm.
not just sort of having stuff wash over you,
Yeah.
but taking that time
Mm-hmm.
and molding something with it, that's gonna change your life.
And I know we like to talk about essays and books that we've read. There's an essay by Margaret Wheatley. She says, reclaim the time to think, because no one's going to give it to you.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to constantly feel as adults, as students, whatever, like we're always in this rat race. We're always just trying to get somewhere. Time is of the essence and all these things to do. But we have to we have to claim back our time, right? And so, this applies to this conversation around technology, and also, applies to all elements of life, our health,
Yeah,
our wellness.
that's right.
Finances, as much as we as a community, here at Shirley Chisholm and in other places, like we care about each other, there are elements of this that are independent, right?
Yes,
And we
absolutely.
have to take ownership
Yeah.
for ourselves. And,
Yeah.
and hopefully by becoming better and more actualized adults, we also are able to raise better and actualized young people who have a sense of agency and know their
Mhm.
own sense of empowerment
Yeah,
and their ability to effectuate, change. And so,
yeah,
technology is awesome. I will say personally, as it relates to like my journey, even as a 40-year-old, right? I've enjoyed the tools that support me. And like you said, I can publish writing now that I didn't really know I was an aspiring writer until recently, right? But it's like, oh, I'm able to jot down this idea and all these types of things, whereas before maybe I would have to pen and paper everything, But
you can do a
voiceover. Oh my gosh,
a voice note.
When I'm driving, sometimes I'm just talking to myself and just getting all these ideas. So it's like very efficient in that way. But again, technology is something that I control. I'm not controlled by technology,
Are
right?
we using it or being used by it?
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
So again, I told you guys we could just sit here and talk for a very long time, but I know we got to get ready to run here shortly. But Mr. Ward, is there anything else that you'd like to share about this topic, or in general that you think may be helpful for families? Again, you're a pro father, five beautiful children.
It doesn't feel that way
Great
much of
partner.
the time, but thank you for saying that.
You're
I think my only other thought is something that came up when you were talking about how busy everyone is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's undoubtedly true.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy named Cal Newport who's written a number of books on productivity.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of his most famous books is called The Deep Life. Something he said that stuck with me a lot is do less and do it better. And I think that's been a sort of a mantra for me. Because if you're getting pulled too many different directions,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a lot of different things, but you're probably not doing any of them that well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can eliminate and reclaim
Yeah.
and kind of focus on your priority issues, it does mean saying no to things.
Yeah.
But I think that's a skill we all have to refine. But yeah, I think that's been very helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just focus on what is really important
Mm-hmm.
and focus on doing those things
Yeah.
and do them as well as I can.
Yeah, and as it relates to technology and our young people, this is important.
Yeah.
Right? This is not something that can wait, right? Like you said, the research is still, being developed, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know yet to what extent, technology and early social media use and all these types of things can have upon our young people. So we don't have a decade, to wait. Our children by then will be,
That's right.
grown and gone.
That's right.
So it is we have the responsibility
Yeah.
as parents, as educators, as a community to make sure that we are helping our children and our young people navigate all of these new realities.
Yeah.
And again, not the virtual reality alone, but the real reality. What does it mean to have a in-person conversation? What does it mean to, not text how you're feeling to somebody, but instead, look them in the eye, and articulate your thoughts and your ideas and stand in front of a room and give a speech or whatever it may be, coupled with the use of the AI and all the other things. So we're living in a very fascinating time period,
Historic,
right?
yeah.
It is historic on so many levels, and we just want to continue to be as smart as possible through all of it. So.
And as human.
And as human as possible.
Yes.
Yes, because that'll never change.
Yeah.
That'll never change.
Yeah.
Mr. Ward, I enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Until the next time.
Yes.